How dare you?
Hey YouTube, can I talk about Velma, please?
Gotcha. You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
Oh my god, our show sucks. What are we gonna do?
Okay guys, time to fix this problem. The Sensei writing team is lazy. You should pretend that this is all according to Keikaku. By force injecting self-referential humor that acknowledges the fact that your writing team is trash that's even more dirty than a hobo eating mold on a dumpster.
Brilliant. You are a genius.
Yes, I am the smartest man alive. Self-referential humor is the funniest thing you have ever seen.
No, it's not! It'd be like if someone broke into my house while I was eating and stuck their hand in the food I was enjoying and then go, "You see, I know what I did was wrong, but it was funny, right?" No, it's not funny. You're just being an asshole. Alright. YouTube's cracking down on the swearing at the beginning of the video. Well, that sucks! You know, I'm really getting sick of the use of meta humor in shows and movies nowadays. Normally, I'm not against the use of it, but lately it's been used as a mean to deflect criticism. A lot of people seem to think that the advent of this new style of meta humor came from the likes of Rick and Morty, and I say that as someone who hates Roiland's style of humor, that is almost an insult to Roiland, and that's just poor timing! In fact, I'd even say that it's lazier than Roiland's, and he's the guy who repeats voices so much that it drives you insane. So, let's talk about Velma. For those who don't know about this trash fire of a show, well, I envy you poor souls! This is the latest incarnation of Scooby-Doo, which for some reason doesn't have Scooby-Doo in it! The Velma team felt that Scoob was too much of a character for kids, that including him in this new cartoon aimed at adults just didn't feel right. You know, when you have to cut out the character whose name has been a part of the series for ages because you think it wouldn't appeal to adults? People who probably grew up with the damn series since Scooby-Doo has been around for 60 plus years, it really shows a lack of understanding of the property and the fan base. Then again, with this in the trailer,
If there is one thing the internet agrees on, it's that you should never change anything ever.
I think it's really telling how Hollywood essentially is a different dimension now. This show is supposed to be an adult-oriented comedy. I say supposed to because when a show goes out of its way to insult its audience, it just really makes it so easy for the internet to beat it up. And I guess I'm joining in that beatdown. I mean, I'm not above it, and it gives my editor a job.
MangaKamen asked me to say something here, but I think I got a better idea. The booze-eyed white dragon still has your hooch.
Now, I'm not above covering garbage on this channel, but this is a special kind of garbage. How, you may ask? Well, this is the opening scene. You may be wondering why there's so much censorship in this scene from me. That's talking about fan service. Well, that's because it's a high school locker room full of women who are possibly underage. Yep, the show starts with the possibility of underage fan service.
Alright, you saucy little shit. Here's the deal. This fan service thing isn't bad enough that you need to fake scream into my ears, giving me an eternal case of ligma. I have to wear headphones for this shit, you know. So my friend here, Mr. Senator, is gonna have a few choice words with you. Ow.
Slippery little bastard. Don't with this, Senator.
And that, my friends, is why you don't piss off your editor. We can do anything and everything to you.
Now, I'm working on a video where I talk about fan service. I don't know if that video is going to be out yet when this one gets out. But I don't think you need to be a genius as to why I have an issue with this. And it's not the only time it does this. It also sexualizes Fred quite a bit. And these are high schoolers. At best, they're just above the cut of 18. At worst, this is really disgusting with them being 15. Look, I may have my own hang-ups, but I kind of draw the line with this. I thought sexualizing possible minors was bad, but all of a sudden it's okay nowadays. Jeez, Hollywood, what is your deal? Look, I had to get this out of the way because it's just kind of disgusting, but this show has a lot more issues than just this. One of the worst things a comedy can be is not funny. Now, you can easily say, "But Kamen, That's subjective. Yes, I am fully aware of that fact. I talk about that subjectivity constantly in my videos. I do not need to be reminded of it, please. Thank you very much. So if you find this show to be funny, well, I'm not gonna judge you, but I think that explains a lot about the problems with society nowadays. I blame the media blamers, which would probably be me at this point, but who knows. The best way to describe the comedy in Velma is basically, what if the crew of Scooby-Doo were meta-spewing jackasses? It's an attempt on parody and self-referential commentary, but it fails when you consider the characters of Scooby-Doo, which, aside from Shaggy, who was a stoner, were pretty bland personality-wise. However, despite that, the characters still had their own charms to them. Fred was the blonde doofus of the group, but still had his skills in investigation. Daphne was usually a damsel in distress, but still contributed to the group and still managed to identify quite a few of the bad guys in the show. Scooby and Shaggy were the cowards, but were also the comedic relief and brought levity to the show, not to mention were still there despite their cowardice. And Velma, well, it was obvious that she was the brains of the outfit, but still cared for her friends. What about Scrappy-Doo? What about Scrappy-Doo? Why do I bring this up? Because in order for parody to actually work, you need to have an understanding of the original characters and work with that. I've said this before, but for characters to click with people, you still need to have some positive traits that will draw your audience to them, and that's especially necessary for comedy as well. However, for the cast in Velma, they're overly exaggerated, negative, one-note characters. It's in the same vein as a comedian who can't do self-deprecation. Now, I'm well aware of the issues of discussing comedy. Dissecting comedy is like dissecting a frog. Sure, you'll understand the gag, but you'll kill it in the process. So what's my reasoning for going over examples in this video? Well, the jokes just suck, and they were already dead, so if anything, this is more of an autopsy. Here's my first example. Norval, aka Shaggy, is making a comment that he doesn't like drugs, and it's not funny, because the whole running gag was never alluded to in the first place. In contrast, in keeping with Scooby-Doo, let's go to the live-action movie from 2002, where a better joke was made with the smoke coming from the top of the van, with psychedelic music being played, with the gag being that Shag and Scoob are smoking weed, but then it subverts them with just cooking weird food. The movie takes a character trait of the two characters, and in this case Shaggy and Scooby's gluttony, and has a subversion of the joke that is actually pretty common in Scooby-Doo. Another example, take Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, where they essentially make the play on the joke right there too. What makes this funny is that it still plays on the characteristics of the characters, and highlighting their negative traits, they still have their own positive traits without the need to essentially overwrite them. Another example of the humor is that it oddly seems to think that it's necessary to basically explain the joke to me, which is the worst kind of meta humor. There's a courtroom scene in the second episode where Fred is accused of murdering two girls and he almost gets pronounced innocent because he can't cut a steak. Like, you're a show for adults. I think adults are clearly capable of understanding the joke without you having to explain the damn thing to me. You are the ones who are killing the frogs! I get that Hollywood writers and directors like to think that us viewers are basically Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel, but we're not that miseducated, and that's a word? Damn it, Google Doc, what the actual hell? Don't prove the jackass Hollywood execs right!
あなたは死ぬべきです。
There's also a lot of vulgarity and snark, which, let me tell you, it's not a problem. I'm not some prude on the internet. However, there's a lot of it, and with the aforementioned meta humor, it suffocates any potential comedy factor. The show's only tools to make you laugh are these. But it doesn't work when it keeps using the same gags again and again. For example, there's a lot of mentioning of Fred's junk and how small it is, as well as how incompetent a character he is that he can't even cut his own food. This is insanely mean-spirited to a character who wasn't actually all that bad and essentially retcons him into being a terrible person. I'm going to talk about this more in the next section, but trust me, it gets worse. It's so far away from the character of Fred. Now, Fred wasn't the brightest character in previous iterations. In fact, in some points, he's turned into becoming a dumb blonde. Now, jokes were still made at Fred's expense, and he was essentially becoming a himbo, but not to this extent, and the jokes didn't go so far as to make Fred into a piece of garbage or even making him a racist, misogynistic person. Even the jokes made at Velma's expense are kinda terrible, like she apparently eats fries from vacuum cleaners and trash bins, but she still does it and doesn't do anything to really affect her. This is gross, and in fact, the show really does a lot of gross aspects to it. Hell, the first scene has two cockroaches humping each other before being squished by Velma. There's this aspect of adult cartoons that seem to exude that it needs to be crass, disgusting, lowbrow, and even sexual to be funny. It's even more of a degradation of animation, as well as making me think that the creators of the show think that we, the audience, are immature twats. You can jingle keys in front of me for so long before I just punch you in the gut for doing so. I know I made a reference to Harvey Birdman earlier, but honestly, if you want a more mature and cynical view of older cartoons, that's probably the best way to go about it. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, like, at all, I've ranted and raved about a wide variety of characters who kinda suck. Chloe Price from Life is Strange.
Jesus, I shot myself!
Alex from Y2K,
No one cares about your sister right now.
otherwise known as Yik. Haida from Retsuko. Velma, both the show and character, are no different. Velma is honestly a terrible character in the show, something which I never thought I'd say about a Scooby-Doo character. To save some time, I'm going to give a couple examples on why Velma is a terrible character. The first being her ego. In the first 2 episodes, Velma has a big ego about solving mysteries, and this is encapsulated when she accuses Fred of murdering 2 girls. Even when she admits she's wrong, she still thinks it's appropriate to make fun of his tiny ding-ding-dong in a courtroom, in front of tons of people. There's nothing wrong with having an egotistical character, but the problem is that egotistical character should have their egos being deflated at times. And the 2 episodes I've seen, that doesn't happen. Velma doesn't fully commit to that of her character. Even more so when there's another scene where Norville helps Velma break into Fred's home, and as she's having a freak out, Norville confesses his feelings to her in an attempt to calm her down. And she takes it as a joke, even when Norville tells her that he's not joking. Am I supposed to like this character? There's also the fact that the show is really dumb, and it's kinda bending over backwards to defend Velma. In the first episode, she's accused of killing the 2 girls that Fred gets accused of doing later. In the interrogation, she's essentially giving a confessional, yelling that she would kill Daphne and her friends. Something like that would get you thrown in the clink because that's an admission of guilt. But later, when Fred does the same thing, he gets declared guilty. Now, I'm not gonna go on a rant about realism in a cartoon, but I do need to point out that writers nowadays really need to understand how the court and legal system works if they're going to include them in their shows, especially when they're tackling heavy subjects like murder.
I think my brain just committed suicide.
Back to my point, remember when I pointed out that Velma breaks into Fred's house? Yeah, that's illegal. She could have planted evidence implicating Fred, and he gets shot in both legs by the terrible detectives. You can say that's supposed to be a joke, but that doesn't really work when you're also trying to make a mystery story as well. I have to make a comparison to Ace Attorney again because it too covers murders and still manages to work with its comedy too. Because the comedy doesn't interfere with the actual investigation and doesn't make the cases bend to the comedy. Even if the main character you play as has to play by the rules of the world, and if they break them, they do get consequences. It's not impossible to have a comedy-based mystery story, but when the main character basically breaks the logic of the world or gets special treatment for no actual reason, it makes it really hard to like the main character because they're getting that special treatment. Hell, let's talk about snark for a second. Again, there's nothing wrong with having a character being snarky. Hell, even Ace Attorney has the characters have their own brand of snark. But here's the thing, most of the time, especially in court, that snark is relegated to the main character's heads. They aren't saying it out loud. Velma, it's like she gets to say whatever she wants regardless, especially when she spouts the anti-white rhetoric against Fred. Yes, Fred is a jackass in this show. He is a racist, but he also saves Velma's life after talking to her and listening to her story. He stands up for her. Yeah, he botches it, but he still defends her. And there's not even a shred of humanity when Fred claims he's innocent, and it's actually proven that he wasn't gonna hurt Velma when she broke into his house. I know someone's gonna say, it's a cartoon! She's a teenager, or some other crap like that. But please, what teenager goes around solving mysteries, quote unquote, eats fries out of dumpsters, breaks and enters into other people's homes, and stalks other girls in the shower like a murderer? How is this a likable character? What good am I supposed to even gloss from this terrible representation of a person? And as I said before, the show calls this out, but she still is a terrible character! You can't just call it out and act like nothing's wrong here. You're pointing out how your writing and your characterization sucks. That's not saying it's good. Even Velma's backstory, where she claims she lost her mother because of her investigations as a kid, gets retconned in the very first episode, making her out to be a little terror that even caused her mother to lose an eye. I should also point out that when she's telling this story to Fred, Fred goes on to say, I understand your life story and can relate to you. They're explaining how we should feel about the backstory as a joke. It's not funny. You're trying to tell me how I should feel about this, and then you just retcon the damn thing later on. What the hell kind of writing is this anyway? In addition, Velma's a terrible detective. This is something that I noticed with a lot of detective and mystery shows do a lot lately. Hell, this was even something that was done in the Wednesday show where the main character is portrayed to be extremely smart, but they keep getting their deductions on who the actual culprit is wrong, and they get other people killed in the process. It's fine to have detectives get things wrong. Red herrings are a thing in writing, but before they actually, do that, that, and instead of ruining the lives of innocent people, they usually make theories before jumping to conclusions. It's almost an affront to detective stories, hell, even early Scooby-Doo as well. Because at least in the original Scooby-Doo, for all the issues of it being rather cut and paste, the crew at least caught the culprits in the act and unmasked them so there was a definite answer and innocent people didn't get arrested. Or shot. The other characters in the show aren't that better either. I've already talked about Fred and how he's basically been slaughtered, but the other characters were turned into one-note caricatures. Like, Norville's a simp, and trust me, I hate using that word, but it's accurate here. And Daphne? Oh gee, it's like every terrible fanfiction ever made. Like, how do you make characters worse than this?
With the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
Yeah, you see that title. Yes, you read that correctly. Into the Spider-Verse. Mindy Kaling, and the voice actress for Velma and executive producer, cites Into the Spider-Verse as the reason to make Velma Indian.
Hello, your computer has virus.
We knew it would be fun for me to play Velma, but we had a conversation where Velma is white, and we have this new choice to do the show, and if I'm voicing her, she should be white or should she not?
We were really inspired by Into the Spider-Verse. It's animation. We can do anything. The essence of Velma is not necessarily tied to her whiteness, and I identify so much with her as a character, and I think so many people do, so it's like, yeah, let's make her Indian in this series.
I feel like this is a real misunderstanding of what Into the Spider-Verse was about. Now, before we continue, I don't care if Velma is Indian. I don't care if Shaggy and Norville are black. I don't care about race swaps in media. I'm bringing this up because the point of Into the Spider-Verse was that Miles Morales was the new Spider-Man and had to fill in some really big shoes once his universe's Peter Parker had passed away. And yet, that's the point. Miles Morales is not Peter Parker. He's his own version of Spider-Man. He's his own person. Miles Morales is not Peter Parker, but black. He's an up-and-coming Spider-Man who's trying to make his own name and prove himself that he can become a great Spider-Man of his own. If this is what inspired to make Velma Indian, I feel like there's a great misunderstanding about the point of Spider-Verse. Honestly, with how Kaleen is putting this out there, it really feels like she missed the point of Velma as a character and comes off as she really wanted to make Velma into her own personal self-insert. Last time I checked, Velma wasn't a slob who ate literal garbage. She didn't treat others with disrespect when they gave her respect, and while she did have snark and mystery ink, it was never as venomous as what I saw in the first 2 episodes of Velma. Again, I do not care if a character's race, gender, or whatever is swapped. Hell, I don't even care that Velma is a lesbian in this, even though it just feels like it's cheap fanfiction given a budget. Cause not only do I have my own thing for skronk boys like Kiryu, but also the fact that Velma being a lesbian is obviously plausible to me. My point is, this feels like a self-insert fantasy, not helped by the fact that Kaleen voices Velma, and I'm getting flashbacks to High Guardian Spice's own self-insert. Make it stop, please! And honestly, it's kind of disgusting to me to say that Spider-Verse was an inspiration to change a character's race, cause again, that was not the point of Spider-Verse. Yes, animation is a tool that creators can use to change whatever they want, but if you're going to do so drastically change a character from their personality, their looks, or even warp what they are, why not make an original character in series? That's what Miles Morales is. In this same article, Kaleen says that she grew up with Scooby-Doo and identified with Velma as a character, and I have to legitimately wonder if this is the character she thinks Velma is. What kind of messed up Scooby-Doo fanfics have you been reading? Do you eat fries from garbage too? This isn't me trying to gatekeep. Hell, I wouldn't even say that I'm an uber fan of Scooby-Doo. I dare say I even hated the series mainly due to the saturation of it I had to deal with growing up with the series since I only had 4 channels on my TV. And every time I get home from school, it was Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo. I just wanted to watch my Power Rangers, damn it! If you were truly inspired by Into the Spider-Verse, why not do what Spider-Verse did and have the original Scooby Gang be mentors to a new generation of mystery solvers? This was something that was done with the Ghostbusters cartoon series, where there was a new generation of Ghostbusters, which honestly had a more diverse cast of characters as the main leads and had Egon be a mentor for the cast. Something like that could have easily been done for a series like this. In another article, Charlie Grandy, the guy who was actually really credited for the show, explains why the cast was changed. It started with Mindy saying, "I'm voicing Velma. What makes the most sense? What Mindy was attracted to in the character and what I loved was what the smartest of the gang that solved the mysteries got no credit. Going from that, why not just expand the diversity of the cast?" With Colleen adding with,
"The original Scooby-Doo, which we're such a fan of, is also really rooted in another era and reflective of the cultural landscape of the 60s and 70s and what people were traditionally putting on TV. It just felt like if we can have the characters be anything, why not do something new?"
I am not opposed to doing new things, but honestly, this isn't really new. Taking an older property and revamping it for a modern audience is something that a ton of IPs have done and honestly have been pretty hit or miss in the coming years. I don't really care if these people are telling the truth or not, if I'm being honest. Frankly, I'm not that smart, but to me this comes off as trying to really use pre-existing properties to prop up a product that wouldn't get the green light otherwise. What's even more puzzling is that when the backlash for this show was announced and it happened, this was said by Colleen.
"It made me think, okay, we've got to be really careful with this character, which we will be because we love her and she's going to have great adventures."
Which is why you make it a point that Velma eats literal garbage. I don't care if a character's race is swapped. At the end of the day, my issue is with the statements made by the creators that make no bloody sense and come off as excuses and just are slaps to the face of your fans, to the people who would watch this. It really felt like we kept the heart of the show. Don't watch this show. Just don't. Even if you're a fan of Scooby-Doo, I wouldn't recommend it to people. Even though it's going to be 10 episodes, I don't really see how this is worth any actual time given to it. Which is a shame, because if there's one thing I could give the show, it's the animation, but I feel that it's been wasted on this mess of a property. Animation is a medium that I love, and frankly, when it's used for garbage like this, I can't help but think of the worst about what can happen. Shows like this degrade what animation is, especially when it's touted as animation for adults, as if it all takes to make a cartoon to appeal to adults is sex, blood, violence, and vulgarity. Hell, Bluey has become a show that adults love because it's actually so wholesome. All of the horrible stuff that I brought up is what Velma is based upon, but it misses the point of why those things are used as literary tools. The depravity of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is to showcase the severity of the situation and how dangerous the enemies are. You need to ask yourself a question when it comes to materials like this. What does this add to the characters or the story? Because here's the thing, the show already told me that they don't care about the story. They don't care if the writing or comedy is good, the moment they made fun of it in the beginning with that terrible shower scene. If they really did care about the characters or the story, they wouldn't have mocked that. They wouldn't have mocked their audience, and they certainly wouldn't make the characters into honestly horrible people in their own rights. So in the time since the first version of this video, the rest of Velma came out, YouTube demonetized my video, effectively killing it in the algorithm, and as such, since I'd like to at the very least offer something new whenever I'm forced to make an upload again, I decided to watch the rest of Velma. And if you want my full thoughts on the series, honestly after the initial disgusting nature that was shown in the first 2 episodes, the poor comedy and the repetition of the flaws I brought up earlier in this very video, Velma at the end of the day is just boring.
White people, Daphne. Just being a white guy with a clipboard doesn't cut it anymore. Fred's a rich white guy with a tiny dong. Which white actors are descended from slave owners? Why wouldn't we? If I were a rich white dude, I'd kill everyone just to get away.
Shut up!
Don't get me wrong, I can see why so many people think this was a psyop from the right of the political culture war, because this is exactly the stereotype of what so many people quote-unquote think woke shows are about.
Oh, we
go to the same parties.
Sex.
Now, granted, as someone who's reviewed and forced myself to watch this kind of garbage, I can tell you that there are roots to that. I don't like using the word woke, because I feel like it's been watered down completely. But Velma takes that and dials it up to a 12, so you can hardly compare the poor writing of something like High Guardian Spice to Velma. If anything, that's an insult to High Guardian Spice that it can even be comparable. But as a show that is attempting to be progressive, it takes its progressive nature from the worst parts of Twitter, wraps up in a big ball of teenage angst drama, and pretty much just makes it disgusting and overly annoying. Fourth world jokes can be funny, but as this show has tried and failed with its self-aware humor that utterly lacks any actual self-awareness, it has really proven to me that in today's media, self-aware and fourth wall breaking jokes have become overly used. Velma is just the worst example of that trend. It reminds you of the time when Deadpool was just becoming popular and you had tons of cosplayers going to conventions and missing the damn point of what made the merc with the mouth popular and just decide to act like assholes and claiming it was all for a joke. And you know what? I'm going to explain the mystery of Velma. It sucks. It's a combination of hypnosis, breaking glass ceilings, and honestly makes no bloody sense. So the culprit of the entire show is my mom, whose goal was to replace Fred's brain with the brain of a girl, and it gets to the point where she wants to put Velma's brain into Fred's body. Why? Because Fred's a spoiled brat who would ruin the family business, and he's an idiot too. Lady, you had 15 years to raise Fred. You could have done this naturally without needing to become a psychotic idiot. This show is terrible as a mystery. Yes, it is fine to have red herrings, but the show pretty much just has Velma guessing almost everyone is the murderer, to the point where Velma's accusation gets Norville's home busted. It honestly sucks, and I get it's for a joke, but when the joke is repeated so often when it wasn't funny in the first place, it only gets more groan-worthy with every single attempt. And let me remind you, I am not a Scooby-Doo fan. I do not care about the franchise, but I have to admit that the Scooby-Doo fans do have my sympathy because of this damn show. To see the characters they love and grew up with to be essentially turned into assholes and stereotypes, and not in the fun ways like with how Fred became obsessed with traps in some iterations.
Traps Illustrated? Freddy!
I read it for the articles.
In all honesty, what really gets me is the excuses that people will make for this show. If you follow me on Twitter, and if you're not, what is wrong with you, you'll know that I came across an article where a supposed 11-year-old defended the show. It doesn't read like it was written by an 11-year-old, it uses arguments that an 11-year-old shouldn't care about, it talks about political leanings. It's honestly disgusting how some people will be so desperate to get clicks on their piss-poor articles that they'll use an 11-year-old for it. Or as I said, some people are saying it's a psyop to make progressive entertainment look bad. It's just a terrible show. Trying to make this out to be some sort of conspiracy theory is not gonna help. It's just gonna make you look like a loon. Yes, let's waste millions of dollars, waste countless hours of talent animating this garbage, and basically make the creators look like complete idiots on purpose. That's a total psyop and a great use of time, money, and energy, especially when you consider that it's on HBO Max, a network that has The Last of Us, a show that has more progressive writing in it, and has been heralded as a masterpiece by people on Twitter who don't know what a masterpiece is. Making Velma out to be a conspiracy to make progressive shows look bad is on par with this.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that?
I've stated multiple times, I don't care what a show or game's politics are, just if it's got quality to the writing. There are shows that have progressive themes that I like and that I dislike. I've covered them on this channel. Velma just so happens to be extremely bad. But Velma cannot just be a terrible show. It has to be used as a political tool to bash either side. And as someone who doesn't really care for the cultural war for this very reason, turning entertainment into a tool for politics, it saddens me that we can't just come together and look at a tire fire without trying to steal fiery tires to throw at each other. Why can't we just nail a stake in this show's chest and forget it ever happened? Oh well, can't blame hate watching for this one, folks. This was already guaranteed before the show aired. Screw this, I'm going back to Kamen Rider Geats. At least the horrible people there still act like humans and realize when they mess up. I'm MangaKamen, have a lovely day, and if you think I paid to watch this garbage,
do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate. You're our favorite indeed. Being a pirate is a right to be. Do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a